Obamacare, Obama phones, and now Obama Internet. I wonder when it's going to become jobs. I noticed that with every policy with your liberal is always geared towards some sort of social program. And while social programs are good for poor people, a job is something much better. And when I look at, this whole economic situation here in America, no one is doing anything to create jobs. All they're doing is creating social programs. And all social programs are designed for are usually single mothers and women. They're not designed towards men. And, this has a direct impact on the long term effects of your economy, especially those in African American communities. Because for 50 years, we have been targeting all of the economic resources towards the woman and not towards black men. And if you really want to really build an African American community, you have to target the men because, again, the man is God's leader, he is the head of the family, and if he isn't put into his leadership position, this community will never grow. All of these programs that we have put together, over the last 50 years in this failed war on poverty have been female oriented, and that's the reason why they are failures because every effort that has been made to help this single mother or help this female has led to the complete collapse of the African American family, the African American economy, and the African American community. All these programs do is enable people to become dysfunctional and then teach dysfunctional values to their children. All we do with programs, we've created the dysfunctional situation which transpired in Baltimore a few months ago. That's all we're doing, right now. And when I look at, Barack Obama now coming in talking about how he wants to give free internet or low cost internet to people, I look at that and I say, this is just the wrong policy because we're not going to be seeing, a lot of African Americans using this internet, this World Wide Web, as a tool. Instead, you're going to see what we see right now with a lot of African Americans now who currently use the internet as a place for YouTube beefs, Facebook wars, Twitter wars, twerk videos, butt pictures. It's just going to be a disaster because this is what many Negroes have been using the internet for. I mean, it's only a handful that are going to use it like I do as an entrepreneurial tool. A lot of them are just going to be using it, in the ways that I have mentioned. And, but the whole thing is that we keep enabling a, dependent mindset in people by giving people stuff instead of giving them jobs. And I think this is, deliberate because, you know, why would you not want somebody to have a job? Why don't you want somebody, to control their own income and control their own money? I really believe that, many of these cabals that I have mentioned in books like Why 70% of Black Women Are Single deliberately want to keep the African American woman in charge of the African American economy so that they can benefit because they know as long as the woman controls the purse strings, they know she's going to have this consumerist mindset. They know if you start bringing this black man and he starts controlling the purse strings, the money is not going to flow as freely for your Air Jordan sneakers, your Xbox video games, your PlayStation 4 video games, your big screen TVs. They know if this man starts to take control of his economy, the flow of dollars is going to change. And if this black man has a job, and he has most of the jobs in the African American community, the flow of the dollars is going to go in a totally different direction. And what a lot of these guys are afraid of is competition from African American men. They know if this African American man starts to excel like he does in sports, in business, a lot of these guys are in trouble because a lot of these guys understand that, their mediocre approaches, are just going to get surpassed. And this is what I believe that a lot of them are afraid of. And this is why they don't want, black men to get economic power. Because if black men start getting economic power, there's going to be some real competition in the country. But, I always believe that competition is a very good thing because competition brings out the best in people and it forces people to become innovative and creative and, start really thinking outside of the box. But the liberal and his people don't want anybody to come out of the box because basically your liberal is a mediocre person. That's why he wants everybody dependent on him and his social programs, because he does not want any type of competition, because he knows that in a world where there's real competition, he would be the biggest loser in the whole game. And I look at this whole thing with it's continuing to enable people. It's already been proven with those Baltimore riots that all these social programs are a complete failure. Yet here we have Barack Obama offering more social programs to people. The greatest thing you could ever give anybody, a black man, is a job. With a job, a black man can build his family, and then he can develop skills, and then he can eventually start to create his own business and his own enterprise and start building his own community back up. But every social program I see pretty much works to the detriment of building up this black community. And the reason why they're doing that is because they keep targeting this female and giving her social programs at the detriment of our black man. And the whole thing is that if you give the black man money, again, they don't want the government, the liberals, and the corporate interests, like these foreign-owned stores and all these other consumer producers, don't want to give this black man money because they know, again, that the flow of dollars is going to change. And what they fear is that this man is going to start taking that money and start using it as capital towards building businesses, building enterprise, and building up his own community and creating it to become a competitive force against other communities. This is the great fear that they have. So this is why, people keep coming at the Negro with social programs and thinking that it's going to help raise him out of poverty. No, it's never going to raise him out of poverty. All it's going to do is create a sense of dependence in the Negro and basically, establish a cultural codependent relationship that is passed on from generation to generation, because as the mother is taught codependency, she teaches it to her children, and her daughter then teaches it to her children, and then her daughter teaches it to her children. And this is what has been going on for the last 50 years in the African American community. Ever since welfare was opened up and the welfare state was established in the African American community, we have not created, a interdependent community where people take responsibility for themselves. We have created a codependent community where we have a generation after generation of victims being bred, and each generation, learns how to become codependent, and with a codependent mindset, they just learn how to be victims, and they learn how to medicate themselves with consumer goods instead of going out and creating things that are of lasting quality and of lasting value. And this is why I believe this is deliberate, because this is part of a social engineering campaign, to create dependent people. And the whole thing is that when you have dependent people, they really don't feel any sense of responsibility. They don't have any sense of commitment. They're just drones who will just sit there and take whatever you give them and never ever seek to challenge anything. This is what you have in your African American community. You have a lot of drones. Yes, they're well educated. They may even know some things, but they don't have any drive to build anything, create anything, or move out of their box. And this is what I see in the African American community. And I look at these policies, like your Obama phones, your internet. All that's doing is creating more and more dependent people who will just stay in their little enclaves and never think to venture out or even try to take their lives to the next level, regardless of how much education they have, how many skills they get. They will never think of, challenging the status quo or, trying to take themselves to the next level. They'll never think of doing anything like that because it's been, again, socially engineered out of them. And when you give people crumbs, they have no incentive to make their own cakes. And I look at this and I say to myself, if you really want to help anybody in the inner city communities like the one I live in, and men like myself, you really want to help them, give them a job. Because if that person has a job, they control their own money, they control their own direction of their lives, and they can start really making efforts to move themselves forward. Because when I had a job 7 years ago, the first thing I did was start the SJS Direct Publishing imprint, and that was something that I had planned to do from way back as far as 2003, 2004, and that was something that I've always wanted to do, and this is what people all over the world do. They go to jobs so they can work for a while to get the experience and the skills that they need, so that they can go and try to start their own business ventures, and eventually move forward and move and have their own thing. And this is what people always try to do. But in the African American community, this is frowned on because a lot of people have learned dependence. They have learned how to become codependent. They're afraid of alienating people at Section 8. They're afraid of alienating people on welfare. They're afraid of offending people, in all these social programs. They're afraid to go out and take risks because they're afraid of losing what they've gained in these little crumbs they've gained in these social programs, that they don't want to go out, and pursue what they want to pursue. And this is the type of thinking that people have grow up from learning, because this is what's been taught to them by their mothers, their grandmothers, and their great grandmothers. And this dependent way of thinking, pretty much permeates a lot of the minds of people in the African American community. People never learn, how to take responsibility for themselves and, make efforts to try to move themselves forward. They never think about, what would life be without these government programs? How would I go out? Why should they have no incentive, to think, let me get away from these government programs. Let me move forward and try to go out and get my own thing. Let me try to go out, and take action for myself. I mean, this is something that I've been doing for the last 20 years. I mean, I grew up on the food stamps, the welfare, the Section 8, and in 1994, when I graduated college, I walked away from those programs, and I've been, left them for 20 years. And I've been trying ever since then, to build my own thing and do my own thing. I've been trying to get jobs so that I can continue to build my own thing, because I've always believed, that these programs are always meant to be temporary. But, you have people like your Barack Obamas and your white liberals who want to keep people dependent on them because, again, they're afraid of competing with people and, having to deal with a economic base that could possibly vote against them or speak against them. And they feel that as long as people are dependent, they'll continue to keep voting straight down this Democratic ticket and continue to vote against their own interests. When, if this person had economic power, if they started having jobs and started having their own money, they may start thinking of, picking other candidates or creating policies that, run detrimental to the policies that they want to implement on communities of color. So they really don't want that person to come up, because they know that, again, if they have to compete with this person, they may start using their economic power to establish political power, and they may start creating policies that prevent them from making money off the Negro. That's just something that's how they do things, and that's why they continue to pacify the Negro with things like Obamacare, Obama phones, and now this internet. And they use these tools again to keep this Negro's dollar under control, so that their dollars continue to flow to these liberals and their cabal of friends, and the Negro, winds up everybody winds up profiting off his own misery and his own poverty. And this has been the policy that has been since Lyndon Johnson's, war on poverty. And you notice the irony is, the more programs we put in the war on poverty, the poorer the Negro gets. And this is just the way things have been. And nobody in the black community really takes a look at this economic system and how dysfunctional it is, because we have been spending money, trying to enable the black woman, when we really need to start spending money to build up this black man, because the black man is God's natural head of the family. He is a leader of the family, and if he controls the dollars, you can have things that function, because the man is a natural builder. He is a natural creator, just like his father God and his son Jesus. And when the man is in charge, things tend to function a lot better. Because if you look at your Hispanic community, which is run by men, your Asian community run by men, and your Arab community, which is primarily run by men, and the African community, they all function the same way. But when we look at the Negro community, where we have poured $40 trillion into creating a matriarchal economic system, 97% of the money flows out, and none of the money flows back towards building the black community. Instead, most of that money flows out to build other communities and make those communities rich. And we really need to, take a really hard look at the way our policies and our approaches, to business actually are. Because I look at the African American community, and it's like socially engineered to remain the poorest of all and remain the most where people are dependent on the African American dollar, but they give nothing in return. And one of the reasons why is because we're not doing anything to give black men jobs or to build up black business. And we really need to start focusing on this black man, because we've focused on, the establishment of the black woman, and that hasn't helped the black community at all change in any way, shape, or form, except become, poorer and more dysfunctional generation after generation. That's all I have to say for this video. Comment, rate, and subscribe.